the generation that you and I are part of, and how that generation is very special. And even Moshe Rabbeinu, who saw it in the future and was taken aback and asked, that's the generation that will greet Mashiach. And how the Rebbe speaks about the Deir Hashvi again and again and again. And of course, what he says, based upon Chazal, Kol Hashvi Chavivin. But that's not all that he says. He says that Kol Hashvi Chavivin, Kol Hashvi Chavivin. Each and every one of us, men, women, children, young, old, learned, not so learned, of fuller backgrounds, of lesser backgrounds, each and every one of us has a role to play. Each and every one of us not only has a role to play, not only a significant role, but an absolute role. A role that, if unfulfilled, the entire structure of God's creation remains unfulfilled. Each and every one of us has something unique and special to contribute, particularly in the Deir Hashvi. And it may be strange to comprehend how is it, as we look not only around the world, as we look at ourselves, we ask the question, we are those individuals that will change the world. We are those individuals that will bring about the Geula Shalema. And while, of course, today, yes, we say to ourselves, yes. But throw your mind back to Tafshin Yud Aleph. What were people thinking when the Rebbe said the Maimer? People were overjoyed, of course. Baruch Hashem Zedah Rebbe. What were people thinking about as he spoke about the Deir Hashvi? I often think to myself, the Elder Chassidim, they were sitting there, listening to the Maimer, listening to the Sichas. A new Rebbe. The younger Chassidim, overjoyed. But did anybody really understand the vision of the Rebbe? This all-inclusive vision of the Rebbe, that each and every single individual has a role to play, and this is the generation that will change the world. In retrospect, it becomes a lot easier to understand, but in prospect, at that time, what were people thinking? And with each successive year in Maimer, what were people thinking? Did they actually have any idea of what the Rebbe's vision was all about? And that, of course, is the foundation of Basi Legani. The fact that Deir Hashvi is different. Yes, it's a foundation that is based on all sorts of previous data, etc., etc., etc. But it's something which is altogether different. It's Chavivin. We didn't work for it. We didn't ask for it. We didn't deserve it necessarily. But we are very different. And we have to take pride in that difference. We have to take strength in that difference. We have to celebrate that difference. And this is so important for each and every one of us. And this has to become a living example within each and every one of us. The fact that we celebrate the difference of our generation. Basi Legani, and how the Maimer explains Legani Lignuni, this magnificent, beautiful garden, the bridal chamber, whatever. And the Rebbe has spoken many, many times about how this world is not a jungle. It's a magnificent, beautiful garden created by God. And at times, it's so difficult to see this majestic garden because the world is a dark place. The world is a confusing place. The world is a place that has more questions than answers. The world is very often a painful place. And I'm not not only from a universal point of view, from a personal point of view, people go through difficulties. And very often it's difficult to see this majestic, beautiful garden that God created. So what did it ever want from us when he asked us to see this beautiful garden? I'll tell you a personal story. I think it's been published in a book as well. When I was a bacher in yeshiva in Montreal, there was one year that I had a chavrusa that I would argue with all the time. If he said day, I said night. If I said day, he said night. If I said whatever I said, he said the opposite. Whatever he said, I said the opposite. It became a standing joke in the Bais Medrash. It was a time that, Baruch Hashem, we were able to go in for our Yom Haledes to the Rebbe. And I thought to myself, perhaps I should mention something to the Rebbe. It was actually quite ridiculous. So I mentioned to the Rebbe that I have this situation, that I'm constantly arguing with my chavrusa. And I thought to myself, what would the Rebbe say? Don't concentrate on what you have to do. Learn not to argue, change your chavrusa, whatever you want to do. What did the Rebbe do? The Rebbe said, Ich sah, du hast a chush in pilpul, that you have a talent for pilpul. And this is something that you should develop. I'm not talking about looking at positivity as such. What the Rebbe shared was have the strength, the wisdom to see that which is good in everything. Not easy. It doesn't come naturally. It has to be worked at. But look for the garden. Look for the garden. People despair. People are despondent. People are desperate. Show them that there is a garden. As Hasidim, as each and every one of us who are messengers of the Rebbe, we have a duty. And that duty is to inspire people to see something good. And while, of course, it's not easy at all times, this is something that we have to share with others. The whole world almost is in a state of mild depression. And I'm not only talking about the current situation, but b'derech klal. The world has become a depressive place. And young people are growing up with this sort of notion. Bossi legani lignuni. We have to become living examples of individuals who see a magnificent, beautiful garden where the Eibishter himself, Kavi Yochel, is present in every sense of the word. And while we ourselves might be suffering from the same illness, we must pull ourselves out of it. Because this is the Rebbe's vision, this is what the Rebbe taught us. And I, as a young bacher, what did the Rebbe say to me? He didn't give me the obvious advice, change your chavrusa, pull yourself together. I see you have a chush pilpul. Use that chush, develop that chush. He saw a situation of positive development. Use it and use it well. Another key element in the mimer. Another key element in the mimer is the idea of shtus, atzei shitim, shtus de kedusha. That we live in a time, the Deit HaShvi lives in a time that we have to do, and we are able to do, radical things. In previous generations, it wasn't so possible. There were individuals who did great things. But we live in the Deit HaShvi that each and every one of us is able to do radical things. Things that others might see as somewhat crazy. But this is our makeup. This is the Deir Hashvi character and personality. We are able to do Shtus the Kedusha. We are able to break through the influence of social behavior. We are able to break through the narishkeit of the world. We are able to do extraordinary things because this is the way we are made up. This is the Deir Hashvi personality. In 1967, I'll tell you one other story. I was in yeshiva in Montreal. 1967, of course, was a very special time. The whole idea of the Tefillin campaign had started. And as Bochum, we took it very seriously. The yeshiva was on a street called Westbury Avenue. It wasn't the main road. It was a pretty busy street, but not a main road. A busy street in the Jewish neighborhood. When the Rebbe came out with the Iftzah of Tefillin, we put up a little temporary budke, a booth in front of the yeshiva. And we would stop cars and ask them, are you Jewish? Would you like to put on phone? Most people quickly drove away. Some people stopped and came out and put on phone. You know, today it's commonplace on the busiest streets of America, of the UK, throughout the world, South Africa. Top people in the street, are you Jewish? Yeah, put on phone. In those days, it wasn't the common sort of behavior that people were involved in and with. Montreal was a city of Chassidish Jungelite. There were three types of responses among the people of Montreal. I'll talk about the people. I'll talk about the Chabad community in Montreal. There were those who thought that these Bochrim, we, were absolutely crazy, that we had lost our minds and were creating a Chil Hashem, standing on a street, stopping cars, asking Jews to come out of their cars and put on film. This is something that was absolutely abnormal, unhealthy, and created a Chil Hashem. That was one. Another group, they thought, interesting. Bochrim do what they do, K'nei Lahara, bring in Mashiach. Then there was a third group. The third group who said, I wish I could do that. I just don't have the guts to do it. We are the Deir Hashvi. We no longer need the guts to do it. We have the personality. We have the character. When the Rebbe spoke about Shtus de Kedusha, who was he speaking to? He was speaking to a bunch of Chassidim. A bunch. How big was the community then? People who are just pulling themselves out of the horrors of the Holocaust. People that come to America. People who are trying to pull their life. Shtus de Kedusha didn't make sense to them. It wasn't something that was real. And the Rebbe pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And suddenly the whole world changed. Didn't come easily, didn't come automatically, didn't come quickly necessarily. But what the Rebbe was saying, you're a Deir Hashvi, Shtus de Kedusha, you are obligated, every one of you, you're obligated to do something radical, extraordinary, different. The world should notice. Everybody might be going in that direction, you're going in that direction. And the first response will be that you're crazy. The second response will be, yeah, let's follow this guy because maybe he's not crazy. Maybe we're crazy. And the third thing I want to talk about is something which the Rebbe brings in almost every single mimer, how the Rebbe is present in our lives the whole time. Something which is absolutely important. That even though from time to time, the whole process of Iskafia and Ishapcha becomes overbearing, even though from time to time this call to be part of Tzivos Hashem, as the Rebbe explains in chapter 11, what's it all about, it becomes overwhelming, it becomes very difficult to live up to being a true chayil, to be a true soldier, with the Mesiras Nefesh, with the selflessness, to be absolutely loyal and devoted to this particular mission. year after year after year, and particularly at our time right now. When I say our time, but the Rebbe says the Rebbe is with us at all times, in every single situation. And that gives us strength, and that gives us power, and that gives us the ability, the courage to continue and to go forward in the most glorious way. And here I'll tell you another story, a yechidus I had with the Rebbe. After I came here on Shlichus to South Africa, after a number of years, B'li Ayin Hara, the Shlichus was successful. And the community was growing, a lot of students, balabatim. And what often happens is that you begin to feel a little bit of burnout. You work hard, putting things together. And I foolishly, now with retrospect, very foolishly, I was coming to New York, went into Yechidus, and I wrote to the Rebbe, it was around that time of Bahal Escha. I wrote to the Rebbe in Yechidus that I feel a little bit of chlishis hadas. And the Rebbe looked at me quite sternly and he said, I'll say in Yiddish and I'll try to translate. As du wirst hereintrachten in dein Hatzloche, was ist lemaile mitam das? Wird dir zukommen in das, was nicht haben den chlishis hadas. On the one hand, a very, very serious rebuke. But on the other hand, what was the Rebbe saying to me? I'm with you. What do you think? Your success is your own. If you think about your success, it's beyond rationale. It's beyond the fact that you can work it out based upon your own talents and your own abilities. Something that was there with you at all times to make it happen. Think about that. And when you think about it and consider it deeply, you'll realize that somebody was there with you the whole time. And when you understand that, you won't have chlishis of das, because that'll make you go forward in the most positive way as well. Bossi Legani is a message from the Rebbe, where the Rebbe is saying, you want to know who I am? You want to know what we have to do? You want to know what it's all about? This is what Bossi Legani is all about. And while, of course, as you go through the Maimonim, there's so much Haskalah, there's so much Aveda, there's so much depth, there's so much beauty, the words. I'm sure every one of you studied and learned and saw the depth. Bossi Legani is the Rebbe saying to each and every one of us, here I am, join with me. I'm giving you the privilege of joining with me. We're going to change this world, and as we look at it today, to a large degree, we have changed the world. We haven't finished our job. There's still much to do. The Rebbe has given us this incredible privilege, this incredible mission. Bossi Legani Lignuni. It's a beautiful place. It's not a jungle. Each and every one of us counts. He's with us at all times. We have to do radical things. L'chaim hagutavach.
L'chaim Rabbi Lipsker. I think there's also a lot of other participants, several other participants in South Africa in the Farbrengen. So I think that's a special Achtus, Zusammenkommen. Rabbi Fox, I haven't seen you since I was in Australia, I think. So L'chaim Rabbi Lipsker, Areshakeh from Farbrengen. You should be able to Yarech Yom Am Blachte. They should give you a lot of kech to Mamshach Zayin the Shlichus in all good ways. And we shall can ausführen the Kavana. And we'll ask Rabbi Golem. Rabbi Golem is here. If you can, Rabbi Golem will tell us some nigunim, about nigunim, play nigunim. I think we know Rabbi Golem. All of us here, Rabbi Golem is a shliach in Sheffield. I didn't get a chance to look up his Wikipedia page to see how many years he's there. Rabbi Golem maybe can tell us. I think it's also quite a number of years. So Rabbi Golem, thank you very much. L'chaim, l'chaim. We can't hear you, Rabbi Gollum. Rabbi Gollum, we can't hear you. We can't hear you.
Still nothing.
Hello, is that better?
Wonderful.
Good. Agotovend, Aferich Yud Shevat. And in response to your question, Rabbi Cohen, we got our bracha on Yud Aleph Adar Rishon Tavshin Nun Beis, and we came here just after Pesach Tavshin Nun Beis. So you can work out how long we've been here. So nice to join you all. And we have a few nigunim firstly.
Mazel Tov. I forgot to tell you Mazel Tov for the Einokol.
Amen.
So everyone also say Mazel Tov, a big bracha, and Mirza Hashem also. The chasna should be b'shot table mitzlachas, and a good to oivna.
Amen. Das darf haben sehr starke Brache. The chasnas is a short table. Whatever it's going to be is a short table mitzlachas, because the other shot is so far have not been so mitzlachas. So anyhow, the Eibishter help, and I'm sure the Eibishter has a reason for it. I wanted to say a few things about nigunim. Oh my goodness. Right, you hear me? Are we back online? Can you hear?
We hear you well.
Good. So there's a sikh in Tavshin Chof, Purim. It's a very long Farbrengen. And the Rebbe there says, Anigen gesungen mit Achtus von Chassidim. Das ist Pesach zum Mefashit sein der Akmumius Shebelev. Zum Mefit sein, soll ankommen leichter, ach wanne war Sorge beteide, zu die was stehen mit allet Ames Schelteide, soll ankommen leichter, aber das hat viele, nicht gucken dich auf Machshavas am Wavelreis, so die was stehen in die allet Ames von Twille, soll ankommen leichter, der Avede vergombel de Grecha de Ehu Bichlau. That's what the Rebbe says about Nigunim. There's more about that. One of the lovely Nigunim, which I think if I can share a screen, I can actually show you the piece, because I went to the trouble of copying it. And can you share the, Rabbi Koenig, can you possibly allow me to share this sikha, because I can...
Yeah,
can you see Ani Mamin over there? This is the sikha of Ani Mamin. And this is a little kata. If for some reason it doesn't appear in the Sefer Sichas in the regular, a revised version appears in the new Sichas, which is, you know, the new Sichas Kodesh, at the back in the Yaman. But the whole thing comes from Richter Rabbi Yael Khan, and it's from Shabbos Pashas Vayero Chav Cheshvan Tovshin Yud Gimel. Sagt Azoi, Hayom kechatzi shal erech achar tefillah, about half an hour after davening, Nichnas the Rebbe Beis HaMedrash, and he sat down and gave the command that we should sing. Some say gesunde the Rostov Nigen, that's what they sang, because it's Chav Cheshvan is the Yom Haledes of the Rebbe Rashab. And after the Nigen, he says a Maimer, Tiba Mascha V'umei Lifneim. After the Maimer, there was a Hafsok of the Nigen, and he said the Chaim, and he says of Yael Khan, this is from his Michtav, it's only Dva Pella. And the Rebbe Shlita asks, he says, Efsheta Imetzen can singen Ani Mamin. And he says, this is the Nigen, Shenignu HaYehudim Beghetto. They sang it in the ghettos, Zachmal Itzlan in the Shoya. So, Miyach Yitzchid, as soon as they began singing the Nigen, Nishtanu Ponov Akdeishi V'nase Zeh Ends. The Rebbe's face changed and became very serious. Kaveh Ezer Egonim Ramas Biyadav Shinagnis HaNigen Hatev. So it seems like the Nigen was being sung a bit poorly, and so the Rebbe asked you to sing a bit more with Lebedikak. Because they didn't know exactly what the Rebbe was talking about. This is not a Chassidish Nigen, it doesn't come from the Babisha source, they never sang it by the Rebbe. But as soon as the Rebbe made the Simon, they began singing the Nigen. This Nigen became a famous Nigen by Lag BaOmer, they always used to sing it. And there's a few versions about it. From the Rebbe himself, it seems only the first version, but from other places it seems there's a little bit extra. So we darf doch ein bisschen singen. Do you want to take it off this thing then? אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין, באמונה שלהם, the whole thing will cut out. בביאת המשיח, בביאת המשיח, אני מאמין בביאת המשיח, בביאת המשיח, אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין באמונה שלמו, בביאת המשיח, בביאת המשיח, אני מאמין, ואף על פי שישמח עם כל זה, אני מאמין, ואף על פי שישמח עם כל זה, אני מאמין. אני מאמין, אני מאמין, אני מאמין באמונה שלמו, בביאת המשיח, בביאת המשיח, אני מאמין, ואף על פי שישמח עם כל זה, אני מאמין, ואף על פי שישמח עם כל זה, אני מאמין. The Rebbe was also Moshe ben Negeh this Nigan. It's sort of said that in Chanami it's not one of the Nigunim which we have from the Chassidish Nigunim. But the Rebbe said since it was the Nigan that the Yidden sang when they were Moshe Nefesh but Poel Mamish HaKiddush Hashem, then that is because they are Bnei Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov is not cooking dick, not looking at the fact that they had no idea where they were going, but they went with their Starkheit and gesungen. And it's at Gödel Marles. And Mesidas Nefesh. What's that? Is it going? Is it still working? Yeah, I seem to have frozen over here. If you can still hear me, Zeit mit dir.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Right, the screen here seems to have frozen by me. En allemaal zeggen dat vergenigen. Which also one of the Nigunim, I just recently heard from Rabbi Shapiro on one of his Farbrengens that which niggin is going to come this year, what's going to be. This the whole year they waited for hearing the new niggin from the Rebbe. So it's still freezing. Ich weiß nicht was it's on.
Keep going. We can hear you. Sometimes
That's
we
okay.
can't.
They say they can hear. So if they can hear, it's showing good. So, the Rebbe, so one of the Nigunim is, can you find me that thing from the Rebbe's letter there? Can you share a screen there if it works? Okay, bring me a l'chaim. On my desk is my bottles of l'chaim, please. What's he saying? Pull me out, l'chaim. Zogen l'chaim. Zogen l'chaim. I can't see you. Maybe that's an advantage on your point. Hey, Messiah, Kasima. That's too low. Hey, Messiah, Kasima. Nirshaya futsu manisecha futsu. Hi, Messiah, Kasima. Nirshaya futsu manisecha futsu. Masai, Hasina. Nirshaya futsu. Masai, Hasina. Nirshaya futsu. Hi, la 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 da 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 da. Ay da bam 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 da 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 da. Hi. Hey Masai, Kasima, Nirshaya futsu manisecha futsu. Hi, Kind of cheatings. Hey, Masai, Kasima. Nirshaya futsu. Masai, Kasima. Nirshaya futsu. And the Rebbe was very loved this thing, and particularly in the there was a letter which I have somewhere that my screen is frozen, but there was a letter written by the Rebbe in Chelek Yud Tes of Igros Kodesh, page Shir of Gimel, in which the Rebbe talks about this particular nigun that seems to be a mockery for Yerushalayim, and the words of Emesai Kasima are zugeklebt to them. That's what the Rebbe says. Noch ein nigun the Rebbe was very pleased with his Oferatzdon nigun. It was the night of Sukkot, Tavshin Chof, and the Rebbe mentioned
So Mirta Hashem, Rabbi Golem is going to be on again soon. In the meantime, we'll continue with the program. We have with us now the next speaker is Rabbi Vichnin from Mayanot Yerushalayim. His father, some may know him from Morristown some years ago, his father, Alav Shalom. And now Rabbi Vichnin is the Rosh Yeshiva in Mayanot Yerushalayim.
L'chaim l'vracha. L'chaim everyone. A good tavach. A freilich and Yud Aleph Shvat. Very honored to be joining again with the Manchester community. I still have very good memories from being there. I think it was 2 summers ago, and we've also met in between with the wonders of Zoom. Baruch Hashem. We should always meet by Chassidische Farbrengen, and maybe meet by the big live Farbrengen in Eretz Hashem here in Yerushalayim HaKodesh. The Rebbe says, one of the sikhs that Rebbe says is Mashiach is the Chachassid. The first thing he'll make when he comes will be a Farbrengen. So we're looking forward to that big Farbrengen in Eretz Hashem. The topic that was put on the headline, on the heading for what I'm supposed to bring about, it's Hiskashrus today. Now, this is, I guess, in the Zoom age, there's even the Farbringers have to commit to what are they going to speak about. It can't just be, you sit down and Farbring and it just, like the old Mashpim would say, if you prepare for Farbrengen, it's a job if you prepare what to say. But really, Yud Shevat is the day of Hiskashrus, and maybe what the focus is first of all Hiskashrus. It's 2 parts: Hiskashrus and Hiskashrus today. But I want to speak about Hiskashrus maybe a little bit more in general, and then see, and maybe each of us will take these words as food for thought and see how we can apply it most practically today. We were very zoiche that the Rebbe's Torah is full in the first years, but not only, with the Rebbe talking about Hiskashrus, but probably more than the other Abbeim. Obviously, first of all, because the Rebbe Farbrengen much more than the other Abbeim, which is a schus in its own right for this generation. The Rebbe Rashab, we know, Farbrengen 3 times a year, generally, it's Kislev, Purim, Simchas Torah. Really get Rebbe Farbrengen more often, but also not as often and not as long as the Rebbe's Farbrengens. And the Rebbe pours so much Torah and so much of everything onto us that it's just unbelievable. And obviously, after all is said and done, what the Rebbe wants is that there should be a bechein, there should be something coming out of everything that he's saying. I'm just going to digress for a moment to tell a story. There was a Yid who was very well known in the first years of the Rebbe's Nesias. Very interesting history behind him. His name was Rebbe Uriel Zimmer, Olav Shalom, who became a very, very strong and powerful Chassid Rebbe. Life story is a long and winding story, but he moved from Eretz Yisrael, he moved to New York. He lived in Williamsburg, but he would come to the Rebbe's Farbrengen. He at one point was also connected, I think, in one way to the Maskiris, because he was an expert. He knew many languages, and he actually worked in the UN as a translator. There's I think, a famous time where the Rebbe asked on Simchas Torah that someone should sing the Nigun Ha'aderes V'Amunah Tzavem and Tzavem in as many languages as they know, and he knew he was the one who was leading it because he could sing it in so many languages, in Yiddish, to whom, in English, etc. I don't mean to embarrass him. He knew many more languages than that. So he, was very, very taken and inspired by the Rebbe's message. And just to point out, in the Kuta Sichas Chelik Beis, I believe, in the Hakdama, it's dedicated to him. He passed away Tes Kislev, and that year, I believe Tashich of Beis maybe, and it's dedicated, which is unusual in these Sfarim, it's dedicated also to his memory on the Chaver L'Deya, which is a very interesting term. But I think he was also involved in the translation of the Yiddish, etc. So he had, so to speak, I don't know if the right word to call it an argument, but the Rebbe pushed him very strongly to be Meifetz Chassidus also in his neighborhood. We lived in Williamsburg, which was a very, quote unquote, a very Hungarian neighborhood with a different style and a different kind of Chassidish Yid. And he said to the Rebbe that he doesn't think that they're going to get what Chassidus is really about and the depth of Chassidus. It's a different style, it's a different world of thought. And one time he came to the Rebbe and he said, I have the perfect proof, he told the Rebbe, that they're not getting it. He said, I was in the mikveh this morning, and it was the day after a big Farbrengen by the Rebbe. I went to the mikveh in Williamsburg this morning, and I heard from two people talking. And one said to the other, Nu, was that the Lubavitcher Nechten geret by the Farbrengen? What did the Rebbe speak about yesterday? What did the Lubavitcher Rebbe speak about yesterday by the Farbrengen? Now, the Rebbe had spoken, I think it was either a beer or a siyum and mikvahs, and it was the Rebbe's incredible style of bringing everything together. There was Nigla, and there was Kabbalah, and there was Chassidus, and there was all kinds of complicated ideas that came together in an incredible beer in mikvahs. So one asked the other, what did the Rebbe speak about? And the person responded and said, "At Greta Groises Orer is going in mikveh." The Rebbe spoke very passionately about the importance of going to the mikveh. So he said to the Rebbe said a whole beer, a whole depth, a whole eon, a whole idea that the Rebbe developed, that all this person knows to say is that the Rebbe said his order is to go to the mikveh. So you see, the Rebbe doesn't know what to talk to. They don't get it. And the Rebbe said, Adarabba, on the contrary, they get it. The whole point of everything we're talking about is that people should actually do what they're supposed to. Is the hisayris, the arousal, that they should actually get it done. So you got to go out and do it. So from all the things that the Rebbe spoke about, it's not just that we hear the great idea, we discuss the idea, but it's what we're going to do with it, what it's going to arouse us to actually get done and make happen. So the Rebbe spoke a lot about his kashrus in a very, in detail, especially talking about his kashrus to the Frierdiker Rebbe and his kashrus to the Rebbe and Bechlal. And also in the experience when people went into Yechidus, which I didn't have the experience, unfortunately. I don't know if I should use the word unfortunately, that's the right term specifically. Everything is Bashkacha Pratis, we're not given to fortune, but I didn't have the experience of going into Yechidus Pratis, which many people over here did, and I'm humbled in front of them. But many times, especially Bachrim who went in for Yechidus, one of the things people asked for a bracha for was a bracha for his kashrus. So there was a Bachar who once went in for Yechidus and asked a bracha for his kashrus. And the Rebbe said to him, "Das is the best bracha for his kashrus." So this that you're asking for a bracha for his kashrus. Du wirst aufhören tun, wie kommt euch bei dir. Und du wirst auch eben tun, was verlangt von dir. I'm not saying word for word, but it's almost word for word. That's to sein mekusher. If you will stop doing things the way it appears to you, it seems to you, and you will start doing that which is expected of you, you will be mekusher. Meaning that the first, in other words, the Rebbe says what it means to be mekusher, and I'm going to say now ideas which most of us are familiar with. It's learning the Rebbe's Torah, it's dedicating ourselves to the Rebbe's inyanim, involved in the Rebbe's miftzayim, in the things that Rebbe asks and wants us to do. The Rebbe once said to someone that one of the 3 ways to tell who a Lubavitcher is if he's involved in those things that the Rebbe had a kachin in that time. If he's talking about me Yehudi, and he's talking about shtakim, the things that the Rebbe was very, very passionate about in those times. And if a person saw it, you couldn't help but, if you're connected to the Rebbe, you couldn't help but also be passionate about these things and care for these things. And by definition, talk about it and make a difference wherever you can. But the first condition is, the first t'nai is, in a sense, when a person is asking for a bracha to start being mekusher, then I'll think of ways of doing this iskashrus and keeping it up and making it grow. But the first condition is that we stop doing we stop doing things just the way because it appears to us. We're not basing on ourselves, and we're thinking, what is expected of me? And the person goes about doing something and he thinks, in this situation, in this instance, what does the Rebbe expect of me? What's expected of me to be doing over here? Of course, there's what I do and what I can get away with, or just what I do and what would be passable as far as I'm concerned, or even great as far as I'm concerned. But there's a demand and an expectation that the Rebbe has from us. There's a perspective that the Rebbe wants us to assume. Like in the story I said before, that person's perspective is that people don't get it. And the Rebbe wants us to assume the perspective that people could and do get it. And therefore, the onus is on us to work and be mayfits and spread and say, in whichever way possible, Paris Achsidus, Darkei Achsidus, because people are waiting for us. You always hear, when you go to places, especially with Yidden who know what a Lubavitcher is. I once had in shul, I daven during the week. I daven in a minyan, which is like a shtiblach or whatever the term for it would be. It's not a Lubavitcher shul. And they they needed a balkoider in one of the minyanim. And actually, I do know a little bit how to lane, but I didn't want to lane. It's a different nusach there, and I would have to change, the nusach of Kaddish, and I wasn't eager to do that. So I said, I don't know, could you lane? I said, no. So the person, I didn't know who he was then, said to me, what do you mean? You're a Lubavitcher. You have to know everything. There's an expectation of a Lubavitcher. A Lubavitcher has to have a vort. You meet a Lubavitcher, automatically you have a vort. You have a vort from a sikha. You have a vort from the Rebbe. Sometimes you think a person is saying it to you just because, this is the thing to say a Lubavitcher. But there is an expectation. Not from everyone is there an expectation to have a vort. Not from everyone is there an expectation who has a Rebbe who teaches him so many sikhs and so much chassidus and so many mamorim and so many ideas that you could say, okay, here, come up with a vort. I don't know, I have to go learn, I have to go figure it out. But by us, Yitzchak, we should be having it at the tip of our fingers. We constantly have access to it. That's the expectation of a chassid. When I think to myself, what's expected of me?
Rabbi Vichron, your mic went off. Rabbi Vichron, your mic went off.
I don't know why. Is it on now?
Yeah, you're back on.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. The idea being that we then stoke the flames of the iskashrus is by learning the Rebbe's Torah, by doing the Rebbe's Haidos, what the Rebbe asks of us, and then also one of the forms of iskashrus. I don't want to call it a form, but one of the yesodis of iskashrus, which gives the iskashrus life, is the benafshik shura benafshik, is the feeling of the kesher, feeling the bond, feeling the connection that every person, and I think this is true. Something over here, which I'm going to be makdim and say, I'm prefacing and saying, I can't expect someone else to have the connection that I have. But I have to understand and recognize that my connection is my connection and someone else's connection is someone else's connection. And every person in their way has to be encouraged and helped to develop their connection of love, their connection of feeling to the Rebbe. I have one kind of feeling. I was telling my kids today, wife to see the Rebbe and go past the Rebbe by dollars and have Yechidas Klolis. We're talking in the context of whatever we were talking about. And I know that they didn't have this experience yet. We're looking forward to it. So what's pushing them a whole time, I hope, and I'm talking to them about it, is this ratzon, this desire. It's a different kind of desire than what I could imagine. I don't know which is greater. It doesn't matter even. To really want to see the Rebbe, because we love the Rebbe so much, because the Rebbe means so much to us in our day-to-day life, the thinking about him, seeing what can I do and how can I make it happen, and when will I be zeicher ready to see the Rebbe in Ritz Hashem. So this feeling of iskashrus, the feeling of the ahava that a chassid has for the Rebbe, I think is relevant to, I'm stating the obvious that it's relevant to everyone, but I think has to be, we have to think for each person, how am I going to develop it to that person? He doesn't have to think what I'm thinking. He doesn't feel what I'm feeling. I don't know if he could feel what I'm feeling, but could be what he's feeling is greater, but to help him feel that and to make it more real for him and make it more accessible to him. So, Pashat, one of the things that Chassidim are very famous for is we always talk about the Rebbe. If something comes up, so to be able to do that in a way that's teichendik, if I'm in a conversation and I'm hearing people talking about all kinds of things, I would have to have a verse from the Rebbe for this, just to make it relevant. In other words, I can't just stick myself in without any teichen, without just stamp to make the statement. But the Rebbe did over the years that we have access to it incredibly. Likutei Sichos, Igros Kodesh, all the other sfarim that come out that have to give us so much of what the Rebbe says and expresses and stuff, but so many different things. When people meet you and ask you, so what would you think the Rebbe is saying about this? So maybe we don't have an exact statement for each thing. We have so many things that are similar. We're so rich to make ourselves aware of that, to make ourselves that we should know that. Meaning we could learn, sometimes we learn that Rebbe's Torah. Rabbi Yoel has a famous line, he likes the Chazer, that he once a Bacher told him his Seder, so the Bacher told him, Rabbi Yoel Khan, I'm quoting, the Bacher told him that for Haskalah he learns the Rebbe Rashav's Mamar, and for Avodah he learns the Frierdiker Rebbe's Mamar, and for his Kashrus he learns the Rebbe's Mamar. And what he was trying to say to him is that his kashrus means that everything is connected through the Rebbe. So your Haskalah, your Avodah, obviously you also learn Mamorim from the Rebbe Rashav, the Frierdiker Rebbe, from the Alter Rebbe, from all the Rebbeim. But all these things, you should also realize that you're finding it and you're getting it through the Rebbe. Now, obviously the Rebbe printed all these Sfarim that we should learn them. It wasn't the Rebbe who printed so many Sfarim. I heard once the Rebbe said to Rabbi Chadok, I don't know if this is true, that the Rebbe said he wants to print 613 Sfarim. Connected every aver, connected every mitzvah. There should be a sefer for every person, for everything, for every specific. There should be a sefer. So all these things are also forms of iskashrus. If I learn a sefer that the Rebbe printed, because I know that it's important that the Rebbe wanted me to do this, that's also a form of iskashrus. I once heard there was a chassid here, an elder chassid in Yerushalayim, whose name was the Baruch Shifrin, and he used to daven sometimes, and he didn't go to Shikul Chabad. He went to a neighboring shul. And he would daven there. So they asked him, why do you go daven there? Or he said, why does he go daven there? He said, because when he davens in that place, he uses he doesn't have a siddur nusach chadi, he doesn't have the Alter Rebbe siddur. So he davens a regular nusach, they have nusach sfarad, whatever it is. So the whole davening, he thinks about the Rebbe. The whole davening, he says, oh, here the Rebbe says I should say different. Here the Alter Rebbe says to say different. Here the nusach is different. Here we say, here we skip, here we don't say, here we do say. So I'm davening a whole davening with the Rebbe. There's so many things that we have. If I'm learning in a sefer and I say I'm not just learning in a sefer, I want to know what it says here. I also, it's dear to me because the Rebbe printed this sefer. The Rebbe wants the sefer to come out. It's a hero of the Rebbe. Even at anything, I look at the booklets of Ha'aris that come out, and I say, wow, this is Bacher who are fulfilling the Rebbe's ratzon, that there should be a kaivetz. This is another inyan of the Rebbe. Every inyan, everything that I come across, everything that I encounter is dear to me, because it's the Rebbe's inyan, it's the Rebbe's thing, and that makes me think and be with the Rebbe the whole time. As we said before, as I said, there's no we over here, no frog in my pocket. As I said before, one of the inyanim, or the mainstays, the yesodus of iskashrus, is the ahava that a chassid has to the Rebbe. Now, it's sometimes also, I think it goes together maybe, that we also take into perspective, and it's important that we understand, or that we also make it clear for people who didn't have the opportunity to experience the way other people did, that in the relationship with the Rebbe, there's different times there's different things that are passing. Obviously, on Simchas Torah, let's say those who were zeicher to see in 770 people walking up to the Rebbe, and you were able to, like, there were people who had this, so to say, said something to the Rebbe said to them, and they said back, etc. And then there was different times where you knew that you have to keep your distance. But a regular chassid understood, b'derech klal, that there isn't just the ahava. Together with the ahava, there also comes the yiro, the soim tasdim alecha melech shetehei masei alecha. The bittul and the yiras haraimus, the yira that we feel for the Rebbe, in front of the Rebbe. And in that way, in that sense, we know, and we have plenty of stories for this, that L'Poel Mamish, the Rebbe knows what's going on with every chassid, no matter if the chassid is far or close, no matter if he's in front of him or if he's far away from him. The Rebbe sees and knows what's going on with us. I mean, the Rebbe said in the quotes in the Sichos, where the Friedrich Rebbe said to a chassid, that you should have called out to Rebbe help. We call out and the Rebbe hears us. But at the same time, if we know that we're representing the Rebbe and the Rebbe is with us, so we also have, out of our derech eretz for the Rebbe, we also, and our respect, we won't allow us to be in situations, to be in ways, and do things that aren't befitting for a person who's with the Rebbe. A chassid, one of the expectations of a chassid is, and this is one of the biggest expectations of the Rebbe in our generation, is that a chassid should be b'simcha. And the Rebbe in this way, it changed, if we may say so, the emphasis from what the previous Rebbeim emphasized. I heard that the Rebbe once, the Rashag asked the Rebbe, why did the Rebbe change from what the Rebbeim did before him? He didn't specify what the change was. He asked the Rebbe, why did the Rebbe change? And the Rebbe said, trust me that through simcha it's better. I'm not translating exactly. Machme besser, it's done better. Nowadays, for sure, the primary requirement, expectation of a state of a chassid is meant to be in, a chassid is meant to be b'simcha. And if a chassid is not b'simcha, if a chassid is in the presence of the Rebbe, where it's oiz v'chadva b'mkoimai, then a person has to. I'm suggesting when a person feels a little bit down. Now, generally, a reason why a person would, many times, why a person would feel down, a person feels alone. The Rebbe deserves that we should recognize, because we know it's true, but sometimes we forget. I forget. The Rebbe is here, is giving me kaiches, is making things happen for me. Incredible stories people could tell you, but not as stories, day to day, the things that are happening. I'm going to say by us, I'm in Mayanot in Yerushalayim. I think it says on my thing, Mayanot Yeshiva. I'm part of the Yeshiva Baruch Hashem for many years. And now during Corona, most of the students had gone home right after Purim, and we were hesitant, should we stay open or not? There was a few people who didn't have where to go, and they stayed behind. And we weren't sure, should we push them to go home? But on the other hand, if they're going to stay here, what kind of experience will it be for them? What will it look like? We had no idea moving forward what it will look like and how difficult it would be. Would it be difficult? Not be difficult? And what responsibility are we taking upon ourselves? And the L'Poel Mamish, the teachers weren't coming into yeshiva because they couldn't. It was lockdown. It was closed. It was this. It was that. I don't have to get into all the details. Everyone knows. What it looked like. Sadna da Arachadu. What it looked like around the world. In each place, at each time, everyone knows what I mean. So, L'Poel, we decided that this is, it's not my decision. That Holla thought and spoke about it and said, this is, I can't see myself telling the Rebbe that we closed the yeshiva. We closed the yeshiva. There's Bakim here that are asking to stay, and this is their home. This is their place. We're not closing. And we stayed open for Pesach, and we had Pesach in the yeshiva, which was a first for us. And I was thinking the whole time, who knows, is this really the right thing? Are the Bakim really getting it? They're not having the same experience with the teachers. They're not having the same experience with Farbrengen. It's all so different. Who says this is really working? I'm not going to say a name, but there was a Bacher who came. He came a week before Corona, a week or two. Mamish before everything fell apart. And we didn't even really get to know him yet. He's Mamish a beginner. He doesn't know anything. He barely knows anything about Yiddishkeit. He came, and he didn't even have a bris when he came. And when we spoke to him about it, he said, I'm not sure, I'm afraid to do it. I'll go home, maybe I'll do it with a doctor. He didn't want to do it. And during Imamish, so to say, in the height of that first wave, not the height maybe, but when it was still in the serious lockdown, it was in the days of Sfiras HaOmer, after Pesach, he said, I'm ready to have a bris milah. And he had a bris milah, I think over the years that I'm in yeshiva, 20 years in yeshiva, over 20 years, we didn't have more than 10 brisim for sure now. And maybe even less. Not much a proper bris, not a tough as dumb bris. A person, and then I said to myself, it's definitely not with our kaiches, because our kaiches were very limited. Our kaiches, we're putting in much less than we could because of all the barriers and all the, hagbalas, and yet, if we're doing something because we think this is what the Rebbe wants us to do, you understand this is what the Rebbe wants us to do, the Rebbe works through us and gives kaiches, and things happen that are beyond what we could imagine. This was an incredible thing for me. That dafka this time, a person should be ready to do something that's in Baruch Hashem. He had a bris, and then he had a picking up ben, and this other that 2 other people had a picking up ben. Picking up bens we've had, not such a big chiddush, but this that a person knows and hears that if I want to do what the Rebbe wants me to do, and I'm doing it because the Rebbe wants me to do it, the Rebbe will help us do it in incredible ways. So the Rebbe is with me. Not with me as an individual, because I am who I am. The Rebbe is with every chassid. A person who wants to be with the Rebbe is with him. And the Rebbe does not like when we're ba'atzvus. The Rebbe doesn't appreciate it. And the Rebbe wants and expects us to be b'simcha. So the one of the ways of our connection to the Rebbe now, and feeling the Rebbe as a presence by us now, is to make the Rebbe comfortable by us. And comfortable, like the Rebbe told the Shliach, the Rebbe should be comfortable in your home, is that we are walking around and behaving and expressing and living with simcha as it's fitting for a chassid, as it's fitting for what a chassid is and what a chassid represents. So in this time of where it's not easy at one point, it definitely tells us that we're coming very, very close. Coming mamish close to the Gula. Mamish, this is atata the letzte minuten before the coming of Mashiach, and we're hearing already the shofar we heard already. The Rebbe said we're hearing mamish the music, the drum roll of Mashiach. So in these last moments, the chaparayim, that simcha, which will bring and be part of the Bias HaMashiach. And in that way, the Rebbe, if when I once read in a Kfar Chabad many years ago, I wouldn't say this. I read this in the Kfar Chabad many years ago. I'd be embarrassed to say this maybe. Rabbi Tzeitlin wrote an article. He said when they were kids and they wanted to copy the Rebbe, they took a siddur, like a sefer in their hands, like a siddur, and walk into a room and make with their hand Hamaisu and say Hamaisu Eifer. There's certain things that, so to say, if we may say this is something that represents the Rebbe. The Rebbe doesn't come into shul to a davening, especially those of us who remember in the later years.
What?
The Rebbe comes. You lost the mic? No.
You're good, Rabbi.
The Rebbe comes into davening, and think about this. In the early years when the Rebbe walked in, it was quiet. No one sang. I think the singing in a part also has to do with Manchester, has to do with Reb Zalman Jaffe Olav Hashem, maybe certain parts of singing and davening. But in the later years, when the Rebbe coming into shul, and before Shachris, putting down the siddur and turning around and encouraging the singing, and then starting davening, which is also an amazing thing. The Rebbe is turning around, after putting down the siddur, turning around to the crowd, and encouraging the singing, and then immediately we turn around and we stop singing. So what's the encouragement there for? What's this idut there for? We're not going to sing now for another 5-10 minutes. We're stopping and we're going to start singing davening Shir B'nai Beis HaMikdash. That's a different nigun, that's a different idut. Because the singing and the encouraging is not just for this present moment. The singing and the encouraging is that a chassid should know that the Rebbe is in it. And if I'm with the Rebbe, not if, when, because, since I'm with the Rebbe, constantly it has to be with a greater simcha, with a greater passion, with a greater excitement, with a greater encouragement. And this is what I share. This is what my cup runneth over. This is what comes out of me. What comes out of me is this incredible positivity. Now, it also has to have teichen in it, obviously. You can't just be tanzen and springen. It's not going to last too long. The steam will run out. Like the said about the Friedrich Rebbe said about the Italian ship, or it whistled. I don't remember if the Rebbe said this. maybe he said something else, but there's the idea that the ship whistled so long before it left the port that by the time the steamship had to go out on its first trip, it had no steam left to travel because it made so much, it used up all its steam whistling. We have to put some more teichen in that the simcha shall have. And if you learn a sikh of the Rebbe, if you learn a maimi, you learn a vart, whatever it may be, you watch a video, you hear the Rebbe saying something, you can't but walk out and be uplifted. The Rebbe is uplifting us. The Rebbe is taking us to his place, to the oiz v'chedvim koyoy. And when we are there, the Mela from there, Yismach Oisius Mashiach, from there that the Rebbe has an expectation of us that we should live with Mashiach. The first thing, the pashta that's going to be when Mashiach comes, is that people will be besimcha when Mashiach comes. Things will be good. If I walk around now feeling and thinking and seeing and realizing and recognizing how things are good, what's the good in everything, and how things are good, and there are things that are open and revealed good, and try to reveal the good in those things which I don't see that are good, thinking differently, thinking that positive way, thinking that Mashiach take away. In that way, we're bringing Mashiach to ourselves and making ourselves more ready for the Bias Mashiach taken from the Yad Mamish. So, Hiskashrus definitely begins with Ahava. Hiskashrus begins with us letting go of our perspective on Tomvas Memant von uns. And I didn't mention this before, but once a person went into Yechidus to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe mon by him, demanded by him, expected by him to be besimcha. And he said that he doesn't have a hotish from us. What should he be besimcha about? Why should he be besimcha? And the Rebbe said to him, because we're telling you, I'm telling you to be besimcha. What kind of commandment? You command someone to be besimcha. Give me a reason. There's no reason. It's beyond reason. I don't need reason. Like Lipska said beautifully before, the to the Rebbe, and I started listening, and that part I picked up where the Rebbe said that you'll see that the Hatzlacha was L'maylam and Adas, so it'll come down into Das, and then you want to have Chalish Das. This L'maylam and Adas that the Rebbe gives us comes down into our Das and doesn't allow the Das to go away, doesn't allow the Chalish Das. So this Das is also Miloshin Iskashrus. I don't know if I didn't pick up if Rabbi Lipska mentioned that. Das is Miloshin Iskashrus, where we connect, and there's no Chalishus in that connection, because we're being uplifted to a much greater place. So when we have that Simcha Valazeh Heisman, Das, we were told, I don't have to understand why. We were told to be B'Simcha. We were given the Koiches to be B'Simcha. And then we will be able to share the Simcha, the positivity, the connection of the Rebbe that we have with every person that we mention. First, the people closest to us, ourselves, our families, the Yidden that we meet. We'll be able to connect more and more Yidden to be connected to what the Rebbe says and what the Rebbe wants and what the Rebbe is. So all those other forms of iskashus which we mentioned, which is doing the Rebbe's Hidos and learning the Rebbe's Torah, which is a very, very powerful way to connect to the Rebbe. Obviously, in each time, Yud Shevat is definitely a time which it's part and parcel of Yud Shevat. It's writing to the Rebbe, asking the Rebbe for a bracha, and telling the Rebbe where we're up to and what it is and where we want to get to. Will definitely bring us to that very, very special moment. We're taken from the Yad Mamish. We will see the Rebbe. We will see how the Rebbe sees us, and we will see the nachas that the Rebbe has from all the incredible things. No matter how difficult it was, this is it's no one imagined even this would go on so long, and we're still getting together on Zoom, and we're farbrengen and singing and giving koiches to each other. Until this happens in a very real way, Yerushalayim HaKodesh, may it be now, l'chaim, l'vracha, good tevach, and Nafreilach Yud Aleph Shvat, the Rebbe was megalat us lately, the greatness of this day, and it's also another gift to us. We have more Yom Tovim than anyone has, because these are all special days to give us special koiches, and we should use these koiches in the best way, and be together, take it from the Yad Mamish. L'chaim, and thank you, Rabbi Cohen, for the opportunity. L'chaim, l'chaim.
L'chaim, l'chaim, Rabbi Vichna, l'chaim, everyone. So tonight is 70 years from that Maimer and Basar Lagani. I think Reb Nemtsov was the one who stood up and said Shechiyanu from Manchester. And Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Golem is back to Negunim. Just so we can say, tomorrow night, every Sunday night, 8 o'clock, there's a special feature from Rabbi Kievman. It's beautiful, beautiful things. He goes through special moments with the Rebbe, the picture and the background to it. It's magnificent if you've had a chance to join. And it happens every Sunday night, 8 o'clock, for about 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. And then there's a shiur At the moment, it's Rabbi Nassan Garari on Yud Gimel Ikrim, the 13 principles. So that's tomorrow night. And also tomorrow night, a reminder that there's a Farbrengen UK and nationwide, and the details have been posted at 8:45 it starts. So L'chaim, and I will pass on to Rabbi Golem. And then the Farbrengen is a Farbrengen. L'chaim, and the Rebbe will join Rabbi Vichni Yerushalayim with Akedah Shteikum Yad L'chaim.
L'chaim, how about a freiliche nigun? Everybody knows that the Rebbe often used to start off the nigun yet nikavo. There's actually two versions of it. There's a version which appears in one of the Nichach takes, which seems to have a hakdama to it and a little bit in the middle as well. But the Rebbe never seemed to sing that. The nigun that goes back to the Rebbe Rashab, and it's mentioned in a number of sichos from the Fidik Rebbe as well. But it took on a special meaning under the communist regime, that this nigun was sung a little bit more with chayis, and it had a sort of a meaning. The Nyet Nyet Nikava, it contains the Eibishter's name in the middle, and some people used to sing it like that. But in a Sikha, the Rebbe spoke about the nigun, and he said that Hayes is the Alter Rebbe Paskins, that we shouldn't say the Eibishter's name even in other languages. Instead of saying the Eibishter's name, Bo, and etc. and God, that in the middle we should put just him, which is Nivo. And so Nyet Nyet Nikava Krom Nivo Anavo is basically the words that the Rebbe used to sing. And where's Mendy? Is he here? Do you want to do a little bit of playing? Mach sich schnell. Keep everybody waiting. Nyet Nyet Nikava. Ay 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 Nyet Nyet Nikava Nivo Anavo. La 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 la. Ay na 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 na. Ay 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 na 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 na. Come on, man. Now, for that start, originally with the Rebbe wanted we should put these words to a song, and they tried a few songs, it didn't always work. They tried for a while to the song of Dai Dayenu, didn't really work. But eventually he came up with this tune, the Rebbe went Zufrieden, was very happy with the tune that we all know together. In fact, somebody else was happy, and that was the Rebbetzin Chana. She was Mishabech this in the nigun, and she was very happy, and she said, that the nigun which they brought from Eretz Yisrael with this tune, Mehetzich Ufaratzda. That was the Fear Ebertson's word, Mehetzich Ufaratzda. Aha, Ufaratzda, 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 Yama Vakema, Twaina Vanegba, Yama Vakema, Twaina Vanegba. Yama Vakema, Twaina Vanegba, Yama Vakema, Twaina Vanegba. Oh, Fanatzda Yama Vakema, oh, Fanatzda Twaina Vanegba, oh, Fanatzda Yama Vakema, Twaina Vanegba. Aha, oh, Fanatzda, 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 Fanatzda Yama Vakema, Vakema Vanegba. Vakema Tzafaina Vanegba, Yama Vakema Tzafaina Vanegba, Yama Vakema Tzafaina Vanegba. Hey you, Fanatzda Yama Vakema, oh Fanatzda Tzafaina Vanegba. Hey you, Fanatzda Yama Vakema, oh Fanatzda Tzafaina Vanegba. Aha, oh Fanatzda, 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 Fanatzda. Yama vakema safina vanekma Yama vakema safina vanekma Yama vakema no vanekma Yama vakema vanekma. And of course there was, I see some children on the screen, so we have to include them. And the Rebbe spoke about the niggin of We Want Mashiach Now in Tavshim Malach that became quite popular. I remember Farbrengen, I think it was Yud Shevat in Tavshim Malach, but the Rebbe already mentioned it beforehand. That is also the Tzun and the Gudim, how you doing from We Want Mashiach Now. Wo seien sie die Zoin Kedoshim? So I don't know if any of the kids from Crown Heights who are now balabating themselves and fathers and Efshazedis can remember that. Maybe they were the kids at Zoin Kedoshim under the Rebbe's table. But anyhow, we want to sing We Want Mashiach Now. The Rebbe liked that. The Rebbe gave a whole deal on what now means, and the gematria of now means 57, and the significance of that, which is, Mashiach will be here this year. I'm Yisro and I'm Nofi. Mashiach will be here this year. We want Mashiach now. Want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. We don't want no way. We want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. We don't want to wait. I'm Yisro and I'm Nofi. Mashiach. I'm Yisro and I'm Nofi. Mashiach will be here this year. We want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. We don't want to wait. We want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. We don't want to wait. We want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. We don't want to wait. We want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. We want Mashiach now. We don't want to wait. There's a niggin which is a bit close to my heart because on the original Michoyach records it was sung by my chutn who's no longer in this world, the Yossi Yitzchak Tiefenrun, and it's on the words of Harninu Goyim Amoy. I wonder if Sollen sagen, was wird sein morgen, als der Schenker wird uns borgen. Es wird noch sein, manche auf der Bar, wenn wir mir ein Kelchstück rein. Haninu goyim goyim amay, amavot avyikai. Come, Yashis, Yashit, the sod of the creep and Admosoyamoy. Haninu goyim amoy, kidam avot avyikai. No, come, Yashit, the sod of the creep and Admosoyamoy. Hi, Toch voortaan laten we balken, dan was ik een beetje met niggin. That's when we find the right. I know what I'm looking for, but big band slow. Where's the big band slow? Yeah, my, and I, da, hi, da, hi, and I, and no, and I, hi, and I, hi, my, mo. Yeah, da, oh yeah, bye, hi, and bye, hi, and I, no. Yeah, my, you nine, Oh, yama ho yana yana. Botchu avoyesenu botchu v'alfartemoy botchu avoyesenu botchu v'alfartemoy Elecha zo'aku v'nimelatu Mechav ha'bosh Matchu v'lo yavoyeshu Elecha zo'aku v'nimelatu Mechav matchu v'lo yavoyeshu I'm back to the die la 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 da die dan die dan die dan die die. I'm back to the die la la da die la la dan die die bom bom bye. I'm back to the die la back to the die da la 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 la. And night to the die dan die to the die dan die dan die die. They die die to the la die. I'm bam 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 bye. I die to the die die. I'm bye la la la. The I and I did a night night and mine and died and died die. Oh, you died and I die and died and died die. Ha ha ha. I and I and I and died and died and did it die and died and died and did it die. Oh, you die and I and died and died and died and died. Ha and I and I and I and died and died and did it die and died and died and did it die. I die and I and I and I and die and die and die. I died and die and bam 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 bam. I died and die and died and die. I and I and lie and bite and bite and bye and I do it and die and died and die. I'm bite did it and die did it and put it up bum 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 it up bum bum it up bum it up bum 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 bum. Did it die dan die did it die dan did it dan did it dan die 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 did it die dan die did it die dan die dan die 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 you die dan die die and die dan die dan die die I and I dan die die and by the my my then all you die dan die die and die dan die and die die I and I dan die die and die dan die die ah I and I and I and I am by the might and did it die and died and died and did it die. I die and I and I and I and died and died and died. Hey, and I and I and I and I and died and did it die and died and did it die. I die and I and I am by the died and by I and died and died. There and lie 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 lie. I and I did and I and died and died. Yamba yada did it I am too low. Yamba and I did it I and died and died did it I. There and lie 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 did it and died and died and died and died and died. By yamba yada did it I. Died and died did it I. Yanda yam bedidai yam bam bam ba yam bedidai dididam dai dan line dididam dai dididam bai dam bai yam bai dam bai dam bai lam bai yadididai dan dai didididai dididam dai dan dai dididam dai dididam dai dan dai dai I and I and I and I and I dan dan dididam dai do ya dai dai yam bai dan dai dididam dai 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 and line, 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 da 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 da. High and I and I and I and I da 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 da. Line, 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 da 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 da. And line, 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 da 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 da. Yeah, da da. Did it lie? Did it die? Do you die? You die? You die? Ah, did it die? Oh, you die? You die? Did it die? Did it die? Do you die? You die? You die? Ah, did it die? Do you die? You die? You die? And die, lie, lie. Did it die? Do you die? You die? You die? Bam, 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 bam. Yum, die, dum, die, did it die? Die, dum, die, did it die? Did it dun die dun die, did it dun die, did it dun die dun die die. Hallelujah, Hashem, Kahobokoyim, Shambechu, Shambechu, Ahahahah, Umim Adnadu, Es Hashem, Kahogoyim, Shambechu, Shambechu, Kahal Umim. Ki yigavar avaleinu hasdai veyemes Hashem le'ya'elam hallelujah. Did it die? Did it die? Die, 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 dum by die. Did it die? Did it die? Did it die? Die, die, die. I die, 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 and die, 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 did it die? Oh, and die, and die, and die. I die, and die, die, and die, 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 did it die? Did it die? Did it dum bum 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 bye? I die, and die, and die, and die, 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 la la, and die. I la la, did it la la, la la, la. I la la ya die, I die die die, I la 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 die. Hallelujah, Hashem, Kahobogoyim, Shambechu, Shambechu, Kahobola Umim, Hallelujah, Hallelujah, Hashem Kahobogoyim, Shambechu, Shambechu, Kahobola Umim, Ki Yigavar. Oh, hallelujah, ha ba 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 ha stay, yes, ha Hashem, hey ya Elam, hallelujah. Did it die? Did it die? Did it die? Die, 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 and die, die, die. Did it die? Did it die? Did it lam bam 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 bam? Yeah, die, 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 and die, 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 die. Ah, oh, yeah, nine, 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 bam, 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 bam. Did it die? Did it die? Did it lam by and nine, nine? Hey, nine, 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 nine. Hi, la, 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 hi, la, 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 la. Hi, la, 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 hi, la, 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 hi, na, 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 na. Do you want to play some?
Thank you very much, Rabbi Golem. Just to say Asher to Rabbi Golem, Asher to Rabbi Vichner, Asher to Rabbi Lipsker, and to all those who made this possible and for joining. This is the end officially to the formal part of the Farbrengen. We can still continue Farbrengen. I think we're going to allow the mics on. Please just do it, V'haskil, V'havone, and Rabbi Golem and others, can zusammen Farbrengen, talk together and allow it in a respectful way. And please, there's also, there's men and women on, so it should adhere to the halachas of tznius. Please just remember that, and it should be appropriate. And l'chaim, zem deneben dalamata b'hu yigalenu.
Shkoyach, thank you.
Rabbi Golem, you can say a story, and Rabbi Kivan, and anyone wants to say a word, feel free to open the mic. Echsedesh Farbrengen. Zichnit Shemen. Rabbi Dana is on, hiding behind Baruch's. Okay. Okay. Okay, we're going to Farbrengen. Rabbi Kivan, you can say a word. I'm sure Rabbi Kivan verbracht a ganze Shabbos. Zalman, Zalman, your father might not know where the turn on unmute button is. Zalman, maybe help your father find the unmute button. Yeah. Okay. No. Okay, Meshemzich. Rabbi Kivan always you say says Meshemzich. Rabbi Glickman's here. Rabbi Pink from Leeds is also here. Kazan L'chaim. Rabbi K. Oh, Rabbi K here.
I just want to tell a story.
Your camera's off. We can't see you.
I can't see me.
Turn the camera on.
Oh, yeah, wait 1 second. Hold on.
Hello?
Oh, there we are. I just wanted to tell a story which I heard when I was in America recently.
First of all, a big mazel tov to Rabbi K. He made chasana, Shalom Ber, mazel tikashah.
I just want to say, I don't want to correct you, but I'm going to have to. His name is not Shalom Dovber. His name is now Baruch Shalom Dovber. So he had to change his name because his father-in-law has the same name. So it's now Baruch. You can call him Baruch. I was kind of surprised when he got his Aliyah. But yeah. Anyway, I just tell you a story I heard from my Mechutin, which I thought it was. Amen. Amen. So I just tell you a story which I heard from my Mechutin, which happened to him. This was a number of years ago. He has a Chabad house in New Jersey. And in his Chabad house, there was a certain gentleman who had inherited, thank God, a lot of money. And he, Baruch Hashem, and he decided to come to my Mechutin, to the Shliach, and he wanted to donate to him. And it was a 6-figure number. He paid off his mortgage, Baruch Hashem. See, my Mechutin, he asked him, so why are you giving? Why are you giving? Me. He was actually pulled. His wife was putting him one way. The federation were putting him another way. A lot of people wanting this money, which he inherited. Why are you giving me the money? Why am I getting the money? So he said that fortunately, his parents were Holocaust survivors, but unfortunately they were Holocaust survivors, which meant, unfortunately, that they had a lot of mental health issues, and they didn't get along so well. And that caused him to have problems. He didn't have a happy childhood. And he felt in his life, he was depressed. He was in Brooklyn. I think he was in college at the time. And it was a day, probably it was a Friday. And there was a mitzvah tank out. Someone comes over to him and he says, "Are you Jewish?" He goes, "Yeah." So he says, "Come in." So they put on tefillin. And after he puts on tefillin, he gives him a hug. I think it was sei gesund. So this guy, many years later, is the one who's speaking to my mechutten. He's telling him over this story, and he says, "I still feel the hug. I still feel the money. I'm giving you the money because this is what Chabad is." So it's nice putting on the tefillin, but we've got to remember to give the hug as well. And then, who knows? Well, we could all be saved. L'chaim, l'chaim.
Rabbi Gollum, do you want to do a Farbrengen nigen, a Chassidish Hatifa nigen, maybe? I can't hear you. We can't hear you, Rabbi Gollum.
Can you hear me now?
Very good.
Yeah?
Yep.
Just to take a minute for the computer the keyboard to warm up. Well, it's pretty warm already. Just something I thought, which I was going through with the Mribui Sipurim and my morning that we learn about the Rebbe and the Kabbalah Sanasius and actually the Fida Chesh, if I've got it correct, the Kabbalah Sanasius was actually Yud Aleph. It's Shvat because the Farbrengen was really on the evening of Wednesday. Al Koponim, they already, as everybody knows, B'meshech, the whole year there's been persuasion to try and the Rebbe should take on the Nasius. Rabbi Yitzchak Duba, my Shver, told me, used to pride himself that saying he was the one that got the Rebbe to be Rebbe. Ich weiß nicht, but Al Koponim, he did make some efforts. Because already the Levai of the Fidik Rebbe was on a Sunday, and Tuesday morning he went over to the Rebbe. The Rebbe was davening upstairs in Fidik Rebbe's room. He went over to the Rebbe, and he said, he wanted to persuade her. He said the Bachim was stopping him, everyone was stopping him. He went to the Rebbe, said that the Rebbe should be Mekabel the Nasias. So the Rebbe returned to him, was completely shoyl the whole idea. The Rebbe leapt. That was the Rebbe replied. The Rebbe leapt, meaning the Fidik Rebbe is still alive. What do you want me to take over? So the Yitzchak didn't give in, and he says, "Well, listen, Enochanami, but by Allah Rabbeim was the Indian as the Rebbe leapt. Now, if it became, we still had to have a Rebbe Surah Gashmi and then Matamasar Tfachim in a Guf Gashmi, and that still applies here. The Rebbe leapt, we still need you." And the Rebbe listened, and he turned around and said to him, "What do you think?" And the Rebbe said his own name, but Proteus. He said, "You think M.M. Sheehan is a Rebbe?" At that point, he gave in. Al Kaponim given at that moment, but there were plenty of other occasions. Fast forward to the end of the Tovshin of that year after the Istalkos, close to Chavdalet, I think it was Chavdalet Tevis of Tovshin Yud Aleph. They all went in with the Ksavis Kashrus and the Ibiki Gemetsum Rebbe. Even on the day of Yud Shevat, there was a whole delegation that came from Montreal, also Ksavis Kashrus. But the Rebbe responded something, and correct me if I get this wrong. I don't know of any other Rebbe by Nasiya Chabad that said this. The Rebbe repeatedly said, "Ihr darf mir euch helfen." I'm not doing this. Even in the Sikha after the Maimon, the Rebbe said, die alle Schlichussen, was der Fiedig Rebbe Tavek legt auf Eich, het darf me kein sein, wir machen gewoon nicht sagen vom Guf, wir machen gewoon nicht sagen von der Schamme. That legs zich niet kan veilig bozen and so on. The Rebbe said, don't think you're going to get away with it. Don't think that you chose somebody who's going to sit and do all the work, and you can sit back and Ishtachas Gafne, Ishtachas Teinosa. You cannot do that. Everybody still has to work. There was this Nakuda that goes through a lot of the Rebbe's replies. I'll do my job, but you've got to do yours. Do das mir ois helfen. I can't do it on my own. I need your help. I need your Ishtatfus. I don't know of any other Rebbe that made such a statement. When the Fidik Rebbe took over the Nasias, it was hardly a whisper. Strange enough, the Rebbe Rashab left at Savoy, left a will, stating that the Fidik Rebbe should take on the Nasias when whatever. And the Fidik Rebbe was equally reluctant, but Bapoili did it. There was no Ksabis Kashrus, there was nobody making a fuss. It went very, very smoothly. The Beryl Rifkin records this in Ashkafta the Rebbe, how he called him in, because he was very close. He was one of those that were looking after the Rebbe Rashab in the last few weeks. And a few days after, whenever it was, it came close to Shabbos, the Fidik Rebbe called him in and said, my father said I should say Chassidus, so I have no choice, but I'm just going to say Chassidus in front of you. So you'll come in after Mincha on Shabbos, but don't be Mefarsim it. Of course he was Mefarsim it. He told one to Chassidim, and he says, I can't be Mefarsim, but you, now that I've told you, you can do what you want. He says, I'm going to go in at the appropriate time, I'll listen to the Rebbe, but I won't close the door properly. So I'll leave the door a little ajar. So that's what he did. He went in, the Fidik Rebbe was there, Tzuki great for the Maimah, and then he started saying the Maimah, but the door was left ajar. So once the Fidik Rebbe started, because once you're in Atzilus, then, so they crept in, the Chassidim crept in. And for that, it was a say, there was none of this persuasion and then this Nakuda that anybody helped out the Rebbe. Daf mir oishelf. What's meant is daf mir oishelf. This is my feelings. My feelings are the Rebbe was doing something very unique, unheard of. In Allah Shalsheres from Nasiya Chabad, the Rebbe was giving us certain koiches that we can help out. You think the Rebbe needed us? I don't think so. I think the Rebbe could have done just like the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, the Rebbe, Al Rabbeim, Messias, and the Rebbe was a melech. Didn't need anything to booster his position in any way. Alpha Pekin, he said he wants us to help out. And if you think that message ever got lost, Tu Aus was the same thing. So this is a tremendous empowering that we have seen in Deir HaShvi. The Rebbe referred to us as Deir HaShvi. The Rebbe was koilel himself with all of the Chassidim. Mizan and the Shvi and Chavivin in the first Maimah. We're all part of it. And in that way, gave us the koiches to do all sorts of things. And it's happening. The only thing is, we have to just make sure that we can do the last few things that will cause Mashiach to come. As the Rebbe complained on a few occasions that we're not doing enough. The Mochsid has been made for more. Okay, we're doing, but the Eibishter help should do whatever it takes so we can bring Mashiach and gain friendship with the Rebbe and dance for Hu Yigolenu and just to see the Rebbe. Just to see the Rebbe. It's worth the whole Mashiach. The rest of it, you do what you want with it. But just be able to see the Rebbe again would be worth the whole Mashiach. Anyhow, that's a few things. I have to think a few Nigunim here, and I shall switch off.
I got a special mention. Some people called in to say a special thank you to Mendy Golem for singing. Particularly, the thank you was for singing Benoisev to the music, Mendy. So thank you, Mendy.
Memeko Oi, didi da mam mam hey, oi, didi da mam hey, oi, didi da nam, oi, didi da nam, oi. Ah, yum, yum, ah, yum, yum, oi, na nam, oi, 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 oi. Didi da ma 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 me, oi didi da ma ya me, oi didi da ma, oi didi da ma. Ah yam yam, ah ma yam, oi didi da ma, oi didi da ma me. רחמונו עונה לעניי ויעננו רחמונו דעונה עונה לעניי ויעננו יחמונו עונה לצבירי ליבו יעננו יעננו רחמונו עונה לצבירי ליבו יעננו נינו
Oh, we're done a bit. A gute Woche. L'chaim. Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
We hear you well, Rabbi. We hear you.
Rabbi Golub can hear me. Oh, Levi Cohen. Very good. So, it's a minute to tell a story, Motzei Shabbos. And the Rebbe said, the Tzemach Tzedek said, the three love dafkas. The saying is that you tell a story, Motzei Shabbos of the Baal Shem Tov, it's a segula for Parnasa. And Tzemach Tzedek said the three love dafkas, not necessarily of the Baal Shem Tov, but of any tzaddik, and not just on Motzei Shabbos, but any day of the week, and not just for Parnasa, but for all good things. So, I'll tell you a story with the explanation to the story that the Rebbe himself said. On Shabbos Mishpatim, in Pashas Mishpatim, you know, we have over there in the pasuk speaks about the mitzvah of Gemilas Chesed in Kesev Talves Ami. So there was a Gemilas Chesed fund that was started already by the Rebbe Rashab. It was called Gemilas Chesed Shemrei Shabbos, and then the Frierdiker Rebbe ran it, and Rabbi Yochanan Gordon, he was the one who in America, he was in charge of the Gabbai of this Gemilas Chesed fund. And then when he passed away, his son-in-law, his name was Rav Shimon Goldman, he was in charge of it. And on the Shabbos Mishpatim, they would make, Motzei Shabbos Mishpatim, they'd always make a Malava Malka, which is a fundraiser for the Gemilas Chesed. And Shabbos Mishpatim is Shabbos Mevarchim always. So the Rebbe would ask Yochanan Gordon and later on Shimon Goldman to come up and say a story or a Dvar Torah, and then they would give mashke for the Malava Malka. So this particular year, Shimon Goldman went up. I remember I was there by Farbrengen, and he told a story. He went on a shtreimel. The Rebbe said they should wear a shtreimel, and he told the following story. And after the story, the Rebbe commented on the story. He says the story happened with Reb Menachem Chernobyl. That Reb Menachem Chernobyl used to travel to a city. When he used to go to a certain city, he used to stay by one of his Chasidim's house. That's where he always stayed whenever he went. At this time, Reb Menachem Chernobyl came to the city, and he sends a message to the Chassid that I'm not staying by you. And not just that I'm not staying by you, you're not allowed to come to my davening. You can't come to the tish. You can't come to the meals, to the nothing, no total boycott. The chassid was going mishuga. He was freaking out. What's going on? And the Rebbe said to him, "You cannot come until you bring to me 2,000 ruble. Without 2,000 ruble, I don't want to see you." And it went like that a whole Friday and Shabbos, and he wasn't able, and the Rebbe left. The Menachem Chernobyl finished his visit the next week, and he went back home. And this chassid was broken to pieces. The Rebbe didn't let me in. He wanted, where am I going to find 2,000 ruble? He's davening, he wants 2,000. He'll never see his Rebbe again without 2,000 ruble. A while later, there was a group of soldiers that traveled through the city, and the general needed a safe place to put his wallet or his treasure box. So he put it into the house of this chassid of Reb Nachum Chernobyl. And the soldiers left. They stayed overnight, and the next day they left, but they forgot to take the treasure. And they came back a week or so later, and they started doing an investigation and searching every single house in the city, except for this chassid's house. And they couldn't find it, so they left. This chassid opens up the treasure, the box, and he sees that inside is 2,000 ruble. He was so excited, he took the box with the 2,000 ruble, and he went to Chernobyl, to the Nachum Chernobyl. I'm guessing that's where he lived. And he went to the Nachum Chernobyl. Rebbe, here's the money. The Nachum Chernobyl said to him, thank you very much. Now, let me tell you why I did such a thing. Nachum Chernobyl says that I saw in Shamayim that you can become very rich. The Eibishter wants you to be rich, but he wants you to daven. He wants you to daven for it. So I had to do something to incentivize you to daven to the Eibishter. So I did what I did, and you davened, and here you see you got it, and the Eibishter is going to give you now, he was a very poor man, the Eibishter is going to give you riches and ashiros, you'll be able to give a lot of tzedakah, and live happily ever after. So that was the Maisa that Shimon Goldman said by the Farbrengen. Now normally, by these, when the Rebbe would tell, when he would tell the story, the Rebbe would have in front of him a sefer, his chumash usually, because it's in between the questions of the Rashi Sikh and the answer. And the Rebbe would be looking inside, and the Rebbe was leaning back on his chair. And here, the Rebbe was looking, the Rebbe finished. When he finished, the Rebbe put it to the side, and the Rebbe looked at him, and the Rebbe said that he has a problem with this story. And the Rebbe said that this story is, he made a hakdama. He said that the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Shver, when he told stories, he made sure to be very precise in the stories. So only a story that I hear from the Frierdiker Rebbe do I know that it's exactly precise. Other stories, the Rebbe says, sometimes grow beards. So the Rebbe says, there's a big problem in this story. The Rebbe said, it's a klotz kasha. It's a big problem in this story. How can it be that the Rebbe should allow his chassid to suffer for so long? That the chassid should miss davening by the Rebbe. He shouldn't be able to go in for a whole weekend, the whole Shabbos, not to daven, not for leining, not for Omen Yehishmei Rabba, not for a tish. The Rebbe used the word, the Rebbe said, even a grob jung wouldn't be able to handle such a thing, not to be able to answer Yehishmei Rabba and daven together with the Rebbe. It can't be. The Rebbe says, a Rebbe cannot do that to his chassidim. So the Rebbe says that the only solution I have to this is that the story was embellished. And what really happened was, the Rebbe said, what really happened was that Reb Nachum Chernobyl came to town and he gave the chassid this message. And that was the day that the army came and left their money. And that day, or the next day at the most, he found the money and he came giving it to Reb Nachum Chernobyl. Because it's not possible that the Rebbe should leave his chassidim in tsar, to leave his chassidim in pain. That cannot be, the Rebbe said. Then the Rebbe apologized to Shimon Goldman. He says, I hope you don't mind. I fixed up the story. Then the Rebbe said that he deserves extra reward for fixing the story as well. And then the Rebbe gave him mashke. The point is, the Rebbe telling us here something very, very important. Besides this beautiful story of Nachum Chernobyl, the Rebbe is telling us that the Rebbe is always caring and looking after us, and there cannot be any tsar from the Rebbe. Even if sometimes there has to be a nisoyin, it can't be for long. It can't be for long. So we have to realize, as Rabbi Lipsker told us earlier, and as we hear the whole Yud Shevat, the Rebbe is here. B'Yeses Eis, we learned that one of the minhagim is to learn a kapitel Tanya on Yud Shevat before Shachris, after Mincha, and many learn the Igeres HaKedesh Chav Zayin. That's what we did here today. The Igeres HaKedesh Chav Zayin, the Alter Rebbe writes over there in two parts. He writes what's so special about the Yartzeit of a tzaddik when the tzaddik passes away. And then the tzaddik passes away, he leaves behind for all of his talmidim and all of his chassidim, he leaves behind his emunah and his yiras Hashem and his avas Hashem. All we have to do is to become a keli for it. And he ends over there, the first paragraph of that Igeres HaKedesh, that those who saw or who heard or were with the Rebbe B'chayav, they are closer to it. Chassidim say that the word Bechayav that the Alter Rebbe writes doesn't necessarily mean the Chassidim who saw the Rebbe during his lifetime. Rather, the words over there at the end of Yigeres HaKedesh is Kol HaKorev Yeser Bechayav, means Bechayav of the Chassid. That if in our lives we're close to the Rebbe, then the Rebbe will be close to us. Whether we were zeichet to see the Rebbe or not, begashmius, or whether we were not able to see the Rebbe begashmius, but if we are kored yeser, if we are close to the Rebbe now, then the Rebbe is with us. And he won't let us be in pain. He won't let us suffer. We'll be able to get through this golus, as he said earlier, Rabbi Vichnin, that we have to get through it besimcha. The whole world is talking about one thing. And by every Shabbos table for the last 10 months, everyone's talking about the same thing, and about vaccines, and about aher, and about ahin. Lubavitch Chassidim are talking about something else completely. Lubavitch Chassidim are talking about 70 to Amaymer, 71 to Nesius, and Simcha, and Iskashros, and Mivtzoim. It's a whole different language, it's a whole different discussion. We're living in a different world. And that's the world that the Rebbe wants us to bring to the rest of the Yiddish world. We are all, as the Rebbe said that after that first Maimer, it's very important to listen to that recording of Yud Shevat, Motzei Yud Shevat, 70 years ago tonight. 70 years ago tonight, 10:20, in another 3 minutes, is when the Rebbe started saying the Maimer of Basi Legani. And after the Maimer, the Rebbe then said very important and powerful words. And he wasn't talking to Shluchim, he wasn't talking to Elter Chassidim, he wasn't talking to Kahanim or to Levim or to Yisraelim. The Rebbe was talking to everyone who was in the room. There's about 800 people there, upstairs in 770. And the Rebbe was talking to you and me all through the generations. That don't think you hired a son-in-law, those were the words he used. Don't think you hired a son-in-law and he's going to take you for a free ride. That's not going to happen. We're going to do this together. So the Rebbe is not saying he's not going to help us. He said, clear, I'm going to help you. And he said, clear, a promise, and I'm going to help you, and we're going to do it together. That means we're doing it together. That means when you go to a Yid and you put on tefillin, the Rebbe is going with us to put on tefillin with that Yid. Or whatever it is that we're doing, the Rebbe says we're going to do it together. And he wants us to do it together. And he's giving us the kayach to do it together. And he's coming and helping us to do it together. And he wants us to do it b'simcha. And that's the main thing. L'chaim, they shall helpen. That on this Yud Shvat, we should be zeicher on Yud Aleph Shvat, which is the yom of Kabbalas and Asiyas of Yud Aleph Shvat, in the 11th month, as the Rebbe once said, in the Chedesh Hashteyasar, in the 11th month, in the 11th year, Toshin Yud Aleph, and it was Yud Aleph of the 11th month of the 11th year. 11th day of the 11th month, 11th year. And that should take, Yud Aleph Nissen is also that. Today's parasha was about Yud Aleph Nissen, you know that. When Moshe Rabbeinu told the Yidden, so it was all Yud Aleph Nissen when they took the lamb. So this is all very important and special times. They should help them. We should say Alachayim, that we should be zeicher, that on this Yud Aleph Shvat, we should be able to hear the Maimer and Basi Legani from the Rebbe, together with all the Nesiim, all the Rebbe saying in the Nesienu, with 2,000 ruble, and with everything, all the good Tazachim, the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu. L'chaim. Yeah, you can listen again. Yeah, you can turn my mic. Before we start another 20 minutes of Nigunim, Levi Cohen has what's the tzel. I saw today an interesting thing that the Maimer, the Maimer of Basi Legani. So the Frierdiker was Maimer of Basi Legani. The Frierdiker came to America. He wasn't well, and as the time went by, unfortunately, he deteriorated. His health partially deteriorated, and his speech. He had another stroke. So he stopped saying Maimarim. Toshin Vov. Till Toshin Vov, he was saying Maimarim. Toshin Vov, he wasn't able to say Maimarim anymore. So what Chassidim have to have a Maimer. So the Frierdiker started giving out Maimarim from previous years, which he had on his file. And some Maimarim he didn't have because they were lost in Russia. So the Rebbe, his son-in-law, the Rebbe was collecting from Chassidim old Maimarim. So the Rebbe found a mimer that was written by, that there was a chassid named Lenochem Sklar. And Lenochem Sklar lived, he passed away in Tafshin Memches. He was the Gabbai of the Chaver Kadisha in Crown Heights. He was on his way to Lava Malka, Motzei Shabbos in the Jewish center, and he was hit by a car. But he was a chassid then in Russia, and he wrote down a mimer on Shabbos Boy, Tofresh Pei Gimel, which is 1923. And the Rebbe had that mimer. So the Friedrich Rebbe was giving out for the various occasions, Yom Tevim, he gave a mimer, and he would add to it a Dibra Maschil or make changes. So the mimer of Basi Legani is actually the mimer from Shabbos Boy, Tofresh Pei Gimel. And the Rebbe had that mimer, so I guess he gave it to the Friedrich Rebbe, and the Rebbe added the beginning of Basi Legani, because over there, if you look in the Sefer HaMoreh Pei Gimel, over there it has a different beginning. And the Friedrich Rebbe added on this mimer, and then he divided it in parts, and he made a second one for Yud Gimel Shvat, HaYesheves Baganim. So that was where the mimer came from. Apparently, in those years, Chatzah Fagin was in Yechidus after this mimer, and the conversation was on this mimer. It was Vahi Be'etzem Hayem Hazeh. It was the original Dibra Maskil. And the Friedrich Rebbe said to him that the mimer is a Balabatische mimer. What does a Balabatische mimer mean? I don't know. What does Balabatish mean? So the Friedrich Rebbe explained to him, what does it mean? What do I mean by a Balabatische mimer? Friedrich Rebbe said that this mimer will help you to become a balabos over the Nefesh Habamis. That's what this mimer is. A Balabatische mimer, it will help you to become a balabos over the Nefesh Habamis. That's the mimer of Basi Legani. And I guess it's the whole Hemshech as we know it. Later on, so the Friedrich Rebbe gave out the mimer for Kunteris Yud Gimel Shvat, and then later, interesting that the one in charge of the printing was a Yid by the name of Mottel Schusterman. He had a printing press, Balshon Press it was called, because Balshon is one of the names of Mordechai Atzadik, and his name was Mordechai. So they named the printing house Balshon Press. And it was down on Pitkin Avenue. One time, the Rebbe, when he used to come back from the oil, when he was careful about Shkia, he stopped there on the way back from the oil and davened Mincha alone, because it was coming Shkia, so they stopped on the way on Pitkin Avenue. The Rebbe davened Mincha in his printing place. So he was the one that was typing in the old printing presses. He was doing the mimer. So the Rebbe told him, he printed the first Kunteris, the first two Maimarim, and the Rebbe told him he should continue typing because they're gonna the Friedrich Rebbe has plans on giving them out later for Purim and for Beis Nissen. On Motzei Shabbos of Yud Shevat, after the Friedrich Rebbe passed away, he was there in 770. The Rebbe came in, and the Rebbe saw him, and the Rebbe said to him that he should stop. No point of typing anymore because the Rebbe didn't. The Friedrich Rebbe didn't finish it, so you can stop typing it. So he stopped. After Shiva, the Rebbe said to him, you know something? Continue typing it up. And the Rebbe gave it out. He split the second half into two parts, and he gave it out, one for Purim and one for Beis Nissen. And that's what we have today, the 20 chapters of Basi Legani, of the Friedrich Rebbe's Basi Legani Tafshin Yud. So each section has 5 krokim. So one was for Yud Shvat, one was for Yud Gimel Shvat, one was for Purim, and one was for Beis Nissen. But after the Rebbe said the mimer of Basi Legani tonight, after that Farbrengen, they sat down, some Chassidim, and they did Chazorah of the whole Farbrengen, and most importantly of the mimer. And then the Chassidim, they went home, Rabbi Tenenbaum and Rabbi Mentlik and Rabbi Weinberg, and then the Bachern were chazering it over, and again, Rabbi Yale was a Bachern then, and they were chazering it again, and then in the morning, people came to shul, they were chazering it for them, and they just kept chazering the mimer. It was the first mimer. Everyone should remember the mimer. That was on the Farbrengen was Wednesday night, so that was Thursday. Thursday night, somebody went into Yechidus, and the Rebbe said, when are you going back? He said he's going Sunday, wherever he came from. So the Rebbe said to him, well, maybe it'll be a Farbrengen on Shabbos, Yud Gimel Shvat. So he came out. He said, it'll be a Farbrengen. So the Chaver asked the Chadakov. He says, no, I never knew. It's not going to be a Farbrengen. And so it went until Shabbos morning. After davening, the Rebbe said, Chadakov will be a Farbrengen in a few minutes. So the Rebbe came out to Farbrengen. He asked the Elam if they made Kiddush. and told him to say L'chaim, the sing in Niggin, and without anything announcing, the Rebbe said a second Maimer. Hayesheves Baganim. Rabbi Yael has his birthday is on Tes Zayin Shvat. So Langi Yoren, he should live to Arichas Yomim. His birthday is next Friday. He's turning 91. This is 71 years ago. So he was just 21 at the time. And so he went into Yechidus for his birthday. So the Rebbe asked him if he did Chazorah of the Maimer. So the Rebbe asked him if you can type up the Maimer. So he says the Sichas were typing up, but the Maimer were waiting for the Rebbe to give us the Ksav, because the way it worked in Chabad was that the Rabbeim wrote their Maimorim, and if the Chassidim didn't have it, then they would make a Hanocha. But otherwise, the Rabbeim wrote all of the Chassidus. So Rabbi Yael says to the Rebbe, "We're waiting for the Rebbe's to write it up." So the Rebbe says to him, "What? You don't remember the Maimer? You didn't do Chazorah?" So Rabbi Yael is a clever man. So Rabbi Yael says, "Shvach, very weak. We don't have a good Chazorah of it." So the Rebbe said to him, "What about the Maimer from Shabbos? Did you remember that?" So he says, "No, that's even worse. Very, very bad. Very, very flaky." So the Rebbe says to him, "What's the Gishen? Genumen zu viel Mashke? What happened? Are you saying too much L'chaim? You took too much Mashke that you don't remember?" The Rebbe smiled at him. So the Rebbe said to him, "I'll tell you what. You see what you can do. Write it up, and bring it in to me. Then we'll see." That was, they realized, and Yael told the story, so that's when they realized that one of the big changes that's going to be in the Deir HaShvi by the Rebbe is that the Rebbe, his main communication was the peh. And to spend time in writing, the Rebbe had much more important things to do. So the Rebbe was very successful, was very talented in delegating. So he was different people were doing different jobs, so the Rebbe could be most productive. So he gave it to the Chassidim, you write it down, and that will be the Hanacha. So they wrote down the Maimer, and it didn't come out. It came out Muga for Yud Aleph Nisan. But then there was no Maimer Muga at all. There was Maimer, those two Maimerim. Shabbos Mishpatim, the Rebbe said a Maimer, then again Shabbos Kisisa, but those were not Muga. But they did find years later, the Rebbe started writing them out. He finished. He didn't go far. It became a very long and beautiful Maimer. So there is from Purim that year. There's the Rebbe's Ksav Yad, and from Kisisa there's the Rebbe's Ksav Yad. But mainly the Rebbe gave it over to the Minichim that they should write it. But the Rebbe wasn't Magia it. And for many, many years, there was only the two Maimarim from Yud Gimel Shvat Toshin Yud Aleph, and then there was Yud Shvat Toshin Yud Beis, and I think Yud Gimel and Yud Tes, and that was it. Only many years later, the Rebbe started Magia Maimarim on a regular basis. But for many years, there was literally 4 or 5, and then 1 or 2 here or there. So that was how the Maimer that we have today, how it came about. The Rebbe wants us to learn his Chassidus, not just to rely on him. The Rebbe did it every step of the way and everything. He said, "Tut was he kent." He said it then in the Sikha of Chavches Nissen as well. And he said, all along, I will help you. But everyone's got to go and do ourselves. There's a beautiful video that went around on Friday from Ramesh Lazar. He said a beautiful story there at the end. I think someone said that I sent it to the Anash group, I think, 8-minute video every Shabbos. From Moshe Lazar. He was a bacher then. Anyway, later on he says that he asked the Rebbe he wants to do more work. He didn't want to just write receipts and stamp envelopes. He was working in the office. So the Rebbe said to him, wrote back, "You should suggest what?" The Rebbe did it very differently than all the other Rabbeim. The Rebbe wanted us to suggest, and then he'll advise. But we have to do the work. Don't rely on me. Leiknit kin fegelach in bosom was the expression the Rebbe said twice in that Sikha tonight, after the Maimer. He said twice the expression, Leiknit kin fegelach in bosom. You know what it means? You ever heard the expression? Levi, I see you on the screen only. I don't see anybody else. You know what it means? What's the expression? So we had a mashpia. He told us that before the Wright brothers invented the airplane, there were different attempts to learn how to fly, and sometimes the people didn't survive. They jump off of cliffs with big wings. So one of them was that they thought that birds have some sort of magical power. So what you do is if you put the birds into your pocket, and in Yiddish, a bosom, the bosom pocket, if you put birds inside your coat pocket, you'll be able to fly. I don't think that guy survived his flight off the cliff. So that became an expression of Leiknit Kinfegelach in bosom. In other words, don't have flights of fantasy. It was and we start imagination. And, the Rebbe says, don't start having fantasies and imagination. Leiknit Kinfegelach in bosom, you think you hired a son-in-law and he's going to take care of everything for you. And the Rebbe says, I'm going to take care of everything for you and you get home in a good time, he says in English. And you're going to go out and have a good time and do what you want. He says, you want to go do what you want. I don't chas v'sholom mean that's which is not allowed to do. But I mean to go and have a good time with the Nefesh Habamis and do, and enjoy life. Have a good, no, the Rebbe says, Leiknit Kinfegelach in bosom. We have a responsibility. We have a job. We're going to get the job done. I'm going to help you, and we're going to do it together. That's the message. And we're still doing it together. We're holding by the end of it, the Rebbe says, but the Rebbe is still helping us. The Rebbe is still here, and he's helping us. He's encouraging us. That comes from learning the Rebbe's Sichos, learning the Rebbe's Maimarim, and living with it, and taking a message from it. I'll finish with one last story. That one of the unique things, again, by the Rebbe, was that practically every time the Rebbe spoke, what was the most common word that the Rebbe said? Hamaisa hua ikar. Hamaisa hua ikar. The main thing is action. And every Farbrengen, everything wanted action, wanted to Hamaisa hua ikar. When they were printing the Likutei Sichos, so there was a mareches, there was a group, there were editors, and they would prepare a sicha, and then give it to the Rebbe to check. And that's how Likutei Sichos happened. Every week they gave another sicha, and they spent many hours, and the Rebbe spent many hours, and then it was published on Friday afternoon. You came to shul Friday night, you came to the assembly, there was a new sicha on the table. It was very geschmack. One time they printed a sicha, it was on Parshas Metzora. And it was a whole pilpul on Parshas Metzora, on the Indian Parshas Metzora, and they gave it to the Rebbe to be magia. And the Rebbe sent it back out, and the Rebbe wrote on it. The Rebbe checked it, but he said not to print it. The Rebbe wrote, "Eifai ha'heiro b'maisa b'peil." There was no heiro at the end of it. It was just a pilpul, a nigla. Where is the Hayro and Maisa B'Payil? And since there is no Hayro and Maisa B'Payil, don't print it. And it wasn't printed. There wasn't the liquid that week. Because the Rebbe doesn't want that a Torah of his should come out and it goes to the whole world, Likutei Sichos. It should come out without a Hayro. It has to be a Maisa B'Payil. So every Farbrengen and everything, the Rebbe always wanted to know Maisa B'Payil. Right? Last week, if you watched the Gem Living Torah video, it was the story of how it started, how Gem started. And they started satellite in the television, and the Rebbe wrote to them every single time. Habapoyel mamish? Question mark. What came out of this practically? Otherwise, what do we need it for? Satellites and televisions and Zooms and Farbrengens. What's it all about? Habapoyel mamish? Question mark, exclamation mark. That should be really, we should get that picture of that Ksav Yad, put it in a frame, and hang it up in every room of our house. And hang it up everywhere. That should be the screensaver for everything. Habapoyel mamish. The Rebbe wanted the Poyel mamish. Anyways, Zog l'chaim, genug gered. Es soll sein Poyel mamish. We should see to it that by the time next Yud Shevat comes, we should already be together in Yerushalayim, the Beis Hamikdash, and with Rabbi Seinu Nesiyenu l'chaim. Now it's silence. I can mute myself. Yeah. I think it.
צווה סופו דברו דבר ולא יקום כי עמנו קהל יקום כי עמנו קהל צווה סופו דברו דבר ולא יקום צווה סופו דברו דבר ולא יקום
Thank you very much, a great shikayach to the Golem crew, father and sons. Fantastic. Thank you everyone for joining Rabbi Kievman for your Varam Averte. The Eker Zazayin Amaiseu Eker. Take of Miyah. Thank you all for joining. Keep on Farbrengen. Tomorrow, 8 o'clock is the Shir from Rabbi Kievman, followed by Rabbi Garari and the worldwide Farbrengen with Mashiach Tzidkenu b'Meheira